people are having some errors with the public link. I'm just getting an email up from Lacey Vreeland that the public link doesn't work. I think Nick had a similar issue. I just looked at a text he sent. So I'm maybe some issues on that end of it at the moment. I don't know, Dan, if you've got that available, if you're able to send that out, Dan Waticha.
The mayor just came in through the public link. I don't know what the problem is. I see that Nick's on, but it says Dan Flegel by him. If there's some sort of tech problems with Zoom, I don't have a clue. I really.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if we can find the public link. I just had an email from Lacey. Public link doesn't work. So seeing if I could find what that is at this point.
Yeah, I received a text from Tasha as well that she can't get in.
Okay. Let's see if we can find something.
Well, I guess I'll start the meeting and make my statement first. So the city administration has determined that an in-person meeting is impractical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the declaration of federal, state, and local emergencies pursuant to Minnesota statutes, Chapter 12, and other laws. Further attendance of the meetings by any other than the city council, city staff, and public at the regular location in the city council chambers is not feasible due to COVID-19 pandemic and closure of City Hall to members of the public. As a result of the foregoing, the special city council meeting will be conducted solely by telephone or other electronic means as provided in the Minnesota statutes 13D.021, and no in-person meeting will be conducted in the city council chambers. I think it is important to recognize that using a video conference is not as good as an in-person meeting, but it is necessary. Under the circumstances, we are doing the best we can to maintain transparency and due process. I would appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation as we work through the meeting. And as I stated earlier, have an agenda or anything, I'm on my phone because of technology, and John and Dan will help assist me. So with that, we are in discussion of the follow-up on the further business support measures during COVID-19 for the Downtown Business Association. John, will you be the one assisting, I guess?
Thank you, Mayor. I can provide a brief summary. I think we're pretty aware of the request and the situation here, but I'll provide a little bit of background. As you know, from last Monday on the 1st, we did have a request before the City Council on a number of items, which we'll go through briefly in a second here. The item was tabled at that meeting and to the special meeting today. With that, there was a follow-up letter that was also given by the DBA a couple of days later that clarified and modified some of the items. I'll go through those. And then we've also had some action by the governor that happened on Friday, in which there was some partial lifting of restrictions for restaurants and bars. Indoor seating, it can now be had up to 50% capacity with a maximum of 250 people. So that's also a major change as to what went on. So at this point, we have a request by the DBA for a few different items on here. And as we went through at the last meeting, we have done this is the second request that we've had from the DBA. The first one that went into place at the meeting of the 18th established the expanded outdoor seating parklets, which we were able to put into place and have ready for people to utilize, adding more seating, adding more toilets, adding more flexibility for restaurants in town for the use of their parking lots. We took a lot of those actions at the first specifically for people to utilize as well. But what we're looking at here is a couple of items. Looks like we have a request from them on the adoption of an emergency ordinance, which would establish the ability to consume beer, liquor on streets and public property. The original request that they had on the first has been modified. They've shrunk that back to a one block area, I believe, which would be Second Street between the bridge and Sibley Street. The restaurant employees would patrol this area, not allow bringing in of outside coolers as part of operations, and it would be limited now to the weekends. So the Bridge Plaza and that area of Second Street of Sibley is what they're looking at today. They're looking at the ability to have beer and wine consumption within this area. Staff has not recommended approval of this. We've got some significant questions related to that, which we could discuss with you as the time goes through here. But that request continues. One thing I should note as well, I did have a conversation with Tasha Nelson yesterday just to verify that the requests that are before you today are unchanged from the revised letter and from the governor's order allowing for more flexibility in the use of restaurant space beginning this Wednesday. Also have a curbside to go area within the downtown area. We just have some questions related to how exactly that would work. That's something that might be workable. Waiving of city fees for 2020 for restaurants and bars. Put some background information in your report that may be something you want to consider. Also having restaurant and patio areas expanded onto a closed portion of Second Street between the bridge and Sibley and along Sibley Street to the Legion. These would be barricaded from Friday to Sunday, June 5th through November 1st. That is something they still seek to have to provide a more area for people and restaurants to use in the downtown area. They state the restaurant employees would police the area so that people would behave themselves and not bring in outside coolers and beverages. Bump out areas, we had some discussion on that on Friday or last Monday. We requesting that the flowers be planted in at least one of the 3 planters that's in the groupings. The DBA would cover the additional planters for seeding. That was the original request. DBA now is requesting that 1 pot on each of the groupings be planted, so 1 of them. And then we've also had some information at the last meeting that there was 1,500 that's been privately raised for planting. In talking to staff here, we're uncertain whether how much of that would cover our expenses that might not be the full amount. So we do have that information before us. And I do note that on the call here, we do have Lacey Quayle and Tasha Nelson. They've been able to join the meeting as well. And I can stand for any questions the council may have. So at this point, council, what we're asking for is your consideration of the letter from the DBA. Staff has noted their recommendations on this and questions within this report, and we can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So I guess this is where I'm going to struggle because of my situation. If I can't see any raised hands or so. Does anyone want to make comments at this point?
Honor, I might propose that if the council wants to remove the 2 items that were placed on the table at Monday's meeting. So if that is something you want to do, I'd propose that there be a motion and a second to take the matters from the table. That's a non-debatable motion, and then you would call for a vote, Mayor. And then assuming those are both successful, because of a little confusion on if the first motion last time by, I believe, Councilmember Lund covered both, I would propose there be 2 motions to ensure that all of the items are off the table that were placed on the table on Monday.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that both items 1 and item 4 be removed from the table for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Balsanic. Is there a second of that motion?
This is Councilmember Fulch. I'll second.
Councilmember Fulch. Any other discussion on this? If not,
It's actually
Clerk
not a
Platten-
debatable motion. Just call
Oh.
for the motion or call for the
Oh,
vote.
okay. Kirk Platten, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
I'm sorry, yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Fassbender.
Yes. Okay. So now we can start conversation.
That Councilmember Balsanik's motion was specifically about items number 1 and 4 on the agenda. So if the council's inclined to have all of the DBA requests come off the table, I would propose there be a second motion that covers that so that everything would be open for discussion at this point, if that's the council's wish.
Okay,
Make a motion to take the remaining items off the table.
okay, thank you, Councilmember Lund. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Councilmember Brox, thank you. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. All right, so we'll start discussion then, I guess with item number 1. Is that how we want to go through with it? Council discussion?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like John to elaborate on why the staff recommendation is to deny any of these items. You could go through them one at a time. John? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Balsanic.
Yeah, I'll start with the first order, with the first request here, and that's the emergency ordinance modifying to allow beer and liquor on the streets in downtown. A couple of items that come into consideration there. Number 1 is really the differentiation between off-sale and on-sale liquor licenses. Right now, all the restaurants in the downtown area are on-sale liquor licenses, which means they could serve inside, can't take beer outside. However, the legislature did provide some special legislation during COVID that allowed for these on-sale liquor licensees to have a temporary off-sale license, which means that if a restaurant can sell prepackaged beer, wine, no spirits to a customer along with a food order. So that's an important clarification there. Number 1, needs to be done with food, can only be prepackaged beer, wine, can't be spirits, can't be mixed drink. So it can't be a situation in which one takes a drink from one place and goes to another place. That would not be allowed under the order. Second part of the order here is that special provision is until restaurants, I'm not sure of the verbiage on it, but resume operations inside. We've checked into a few sources, including the League of Minnesota Cities, to get their clarification as to does the partial lifting coming up on June 10th affect that? And we had one opinion that said, yeah, once June 10th arrives, the ability for our on-sale liquor licensees, our restaurants in the downtown to sell liquor to go ceases at that point. Granted, I will admit that this is an item, I don't know that it's been fully satisfied because we've heard differing opinions on it, but certainly something in question at this standpoint. The nexus that we have between a downtown restaurant being able to provide additional sales with consumption areas, either A, is limited just to food orders, or B, may cease in the very near future because of the governor's order. So, we question what the effectiveness would be on that. Second would be the policing aspect of it. When you create an area there, how are you going to police it? How are you going to have underage drinking curtailed on that one? What sort of effect are you going to have to the neighboring areas is a question. Liquor liability is a big concern for us when you have a situation in which you have multiple enterprises serving liquor within a limited area. If something happens, who assumes liability? There's going to be a lot of finger pointing on that. One of those fingers is going to come towards us because we're the city and it's within our right of way. That's a concern for us. When we take a look at the situation of when we have under our code, our ability to do that is limited. We have a special, we have events that happen downtown. The key point about the events that happen downtown in which we establish these areas is that we have a single entity that is responsible for this. In this situation, we would not have a single entity. We would have multiple entities that would be, and how we hold these individuals responsible is a question for us. I think that is probably a highlight of our major concerns on this one. I can stand for any questions on that.
Thank you, John.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilmember Balsanic.
I'd like our city attorney, Dan, comment on what John has just gone through for us, please. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, council member. I generally agree with all of that. I think I want to be very specific. For the on-sale liquor licenses that exist, I do not believe the city can allow service where the alcohol service is not contained within some designated space for that specific licensee. I think what's being proposed here is that there would be this larger designated area. The on-sale liquor licensees would be able to sell alcohol from their stores or their restaurants, bars, and then individuals would be able to walk amongst this larger area. The concept for an on-sale license is that has to be on sale, on premises. So if you would be allowing multiple licensees to be able to funnel their customers into the larger area without any specific designation, I think that is just inherently not allowed under an on-sale license. This language on compact and contiguous comes into play, that there has to be some designated space. I think it would be conceivable to allow each of the bars or restaurants a larger space amongst some designated or fenced in areas, separated area on 2nd Street or the rights of way. But I think having everybody being able to mingle their customers in one large designated area is, in my opinion, the problem. Having separate spaces, even if they get larger than they are now with the parklets or whatever we're calling them today, I think that may be okay, but the mixing of those customers is what I see as the problem. I think that if the district is identified to allow open containers, and this would be open containers that are sold off sale either by these retailers while they're allowed to do so under the new law or by any other off sale seller, then I don't think we can restrict the consumption within that district to just people who purchase from these licensees downtown. I think there's a fairness issue there. So I don't want to say that there can't be a district where open bottle consumption is allowed, but I do not think we can limit the consumption to only beverages that are sold from these local downtown retailers. And I don't think that we can have the retailers themselves or the licensees themselves policing that. If we need police to police liquor laws. So I think that's a concern. Again, I think if we're going to allow this open area in some fashion, then I think there still has to be within it designated areas for each of the on-sale licensees where their customers, while they have on-sale purchases, have to remain. And I think that covers the liquor license, the licensing. It also covers the insurance and liability issues that come with liquor sales, because if there's a problem, those people are contained within the area where that alcohol was sold and can be tied back to the licensee in case of oversales or whatever it might be, or someone gets hurt after they leave those premises. So I'd say that's what I wanted to distinguish here, and I think how John explained it is correct. That's helpful.
Let me ask you, Dan, in terms of the liability, is the city equally liable if there's, some kind of a problem along with the business that's selling the alcohol either on or off sale? Who's liable here? if we were to approve this?
If the city council approves something with, let's just call it larger designated areas for each of the retailers, what the city would do would require that they provide an expanded indemnification and hold harmless agreement, just like they did with the parklets. And they would also have to provide their insurance. So I would say that the licensee is primarily liable for problems that happen in that area. The fact of the matter, though, is this consumption is occurring on city property, the city street, the city sidewalk. So there is a likelihood that the city gets brought into a lawsuit if there is one. As a council member noted last week, the league has said that generally, if we do the process correctly, the league coverage, our insurance should allow us to defend the city under that insurance if there is a claim. What I would distinguish that, though, is I think that opinion from the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust was limited to what I'm talking about, some designated areas on city streets or sidewalks where retailers are allowed to sell alcohol on sale. And I do think they would cover in that situation. What I do not think the opinion from the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust says is that they would cover the city in the event of liability if we do what I think is what's being proposed by the DBA, which is this larger area where all of the retailers' customers can commingle. I think there would be a problem with that. And the reason is because in any lawsuit, if the city gets brought in, the city's insurer would be trying to push the liability back onto the licensee, and the facts would be too difficult in that situation to try to discern. So that's what I would say about liability.
Your Honor, this is Councilmember Fulch.
Yeah, let me just finish. I'm sorry, council member.
We weren't recognized. We're supposed to be following decorum policy here.
Well, I'm still.
Sorry, he was still.
I still am recognized because I'm asking the city attorney a question. If that's all right,
You're still in the discussion with Dan. Yes, thank you,
okay,
Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dan, I'm not sure if you can speak to this, but if we were to approve something like this, my assumption is that the business owners would have to notify their insurance companies, and there would probably be an increase in their premiums. Do you know anything about that? I again, having grown up in the restaurant business, I know that liability insurance with insurance companies is very dicey in terms of what they'll cover and what they won't cover.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if you could respond to that, please.
I can't say with certainty, council member. What I can refer to is when the licensees have expanded across onto the sidewalk as part of the sidewalk cafe. And then recently when they were allowed to expand into the parklet areas, each of the licensees were required to provide new certificates of insurance, which implied they were discussing these issues with their insurers and their agents. I have not heard anything that they were told that their premiums increased as a result of the additional coverage. So just from experience, I don't know that would be the case, but I think if there's a situation that an insurer believes creates an increased risk of liability, that's when policy premiums are going to be increased. I can't say in this situation or any of the different possibilities if there is going to be a direct correlation to the insurance premiums.
Okay, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Your Honor. I'll relinquish the floor to Councilmember Fulch.
Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to clarify on a couple of items, and so the area, this last weekend I went downtown and I took the time to talk to Tasha Nelson, the president of the DBA. And so what they're proposing for the block to be closed down, they're all going to continue to have their own patio areas that are established for the parklets. As you know, El Mexican hasn't had the chance to establish theirs yet, so that would give them that ability. And then also The Fireside Hearth would then, they're also, planning to have one. I was down there. It is kind of tight when you're walking across the roadway. And so truly what they're trying to do is just to establish a safe pedestrian zone by closing the street so that people can safely walk around and socially distance. So all of those restaurants will continue to have their own roped in spacing. I mean, if you've ever been a server, your worst anxiety nightmare is not knowing where your section is. And so there's just absolutely no way they're just going to have a free for all in the middle of the street. And so that by no means was their intention, but rather it would allow that proper social distancing. So that's the first issue, is dealing with the closure of the street itself. I mean, that's their only goal, is to make it safe so that people feel free to go down there and walk around and visit the restaurants and then the retail establishments. And so when you talk to the retail establishments, their foot traffic is dismal. And so they want people to feel that it's safe to be down there for a few hours. And so really that's the intention with the street closure, because they're still suffering greatly. The second issue with the consumption, and again, with their servers are only going to be serving their patrons that are within their own designated roped in areas for on sale serving. And then I have the League of Minnesota Cities website pulled up right now, the particular page that's designated for outdoor space. The question, can restaurants with on sale liquor license continue to sell limited quantities of alcohol with takeout food orders? It continues to say yes, and that the governor's new executive order with the phasing of partial extensions will continue to allow that. And so the league continues to say that publicly on their website, that there is no intent to take away the curbside to go off sale ability. And so again, so if for the areas that are outside of the roped in patio areas, it would allow for people to have the curbside to go with their meal and have a beverage, and then to be able to go in the plaza underneath the bridge for spillover. And then if, just in that area, if they wanted to consume their off sale curbside to go, so that they could do that within the mall area, and then still have the ability to go and visit some of the retail establishments that are downtown. Again, when I went this last Saturday, I walked around and the Legion was full. The Lac and Dam was full, and I was able to get a table at the Busted Nut, and then they were full as well. And so it is very limited seating, the amount that they currently have, and I couldn't get a reservation at the Legion until much later, so it was difficult. And so if you wanted to be able to still get something and go within the time frame that you wanted to be downtown, I think that we shouldn't be taking off the table the assumption that curbside to go is suddenly going to be whisked away. And so again, to summarize, they're only looking to have the street closure on the weekends from until Sunday, and then this consumption area as well would correspond with that, so that just so that they can expand their footprint. Although they are going to be able to go have 50% capacity within their restaurants, when you listen to surveys that are being done by the public, 75 to 80% of the public is saying that they're not going to go back into restaurants. And so I think that whatever we can do to help support the outdoor seating, because we know that it's safer, it helps lessen the spread of coronavirus rather than pushing people indoors. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you.
Discussion from any other council members? Lund?
Yeah, thank you for the recap, Councilmember Fulch. I think the what you described and what is in the request are slightly right, and at least how I see it. But what we're supposed to do here today, I think, in my opinion, is I apologize about I'm outside, so I apologize about the car noise there. But what we're supposed to do today is look at what the net goal is here and see how we can get to that. And so it may not be exactly as requested, and I think that might be okay with the DBA, and I think we have some of their representation on as well, so we could hopefully get some input from them. But my assumption is the end goal is to be able to get as much back to pre-COVID revenue as possible, right? So that means more seating, and it may not be this huge that's free flowing people with liquor and alcohol and beer and so forth, but maybe it is expanding the footprint that they currently have outdoors, and that might be addressing the issue. So hopefully we can look beyond just what we're looking for. I don't know if anybody has any suggestions beyond what Dan had mentioned, which was perhaps expanding those parklet areas. That seems to me to make a lot of sense if they're able to be expanded and still keep that connection to their storefront. I think that removes any issues with liquor license issues. Also, just as far as logistics are concerned, it's a heck of a lot easier to serve your own customers when you don't have to go a block away or whatever, obviously. And then the road closure seems to be something that they're looking for just for the weekends, and maybe that allows them to expand further for weekend demand, which is higher. I don't know, but they could become one and the same solution. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Councilmember Balsonic?
Yes, thank you. I'm seeing it the same way that Councilmember Lund is, that we've got two things here Councilmember Fulch has talked about, and I think we've got to down to one. To try and simplify this, we've purchased off-sale from the restaurants downtown for takeout. That's one problem that we have that we're discussing here this morning. So, I mean, I know you can do that right now, according to the governor's order. The other problem is trying to figure out what to do with on-sale spirits that a person would purchase and either stay within the parklet, the contiguous configuration of the establishment, or do we allow them to go someplace else? Now, with the off sale, in terms of the liability, my suggestion would be that the establishment indicate on the sales slip off sale if there's spirits purchased and the can is closed, the bottle is not opened yet, and so forth. It's an off sale, and then the patron, in Betsy's, in my case, I take it home and we consume at home. That becomes my problem, not the problem of the establishment. If there's designation on the part of the establishment that something is purchased off sale, then it seems to me that it eliminates any liability on their part if the patron goes and takes the food and the spirits over to the area underneath the bridge, for example, and starts to consume both the food and beverages, or they go to Veterans Park or wherever. parking lot, something like that. I can see myself being in favor of something like that. But I think we've got to designate on sale and off sale and where they can go with on sale and where is the liability with off sale. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Balsonic. And I'll look for assistance for council members to speak.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yep, thank you. This question is for Dan Flegel. If I'm looking at role playing out the scenario that everyone's talked about here, if it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday that they're asking where they close the block off or block and a half, because there's no driving traffic through there, can they expand their patios that are currently out in the parking spot to take 3 more parking spots in front of another store if that store agrees to it? But we can't drive through anyway, so I don't know why a store would not say to this, say, sure, go ahead and use those other 3 spots. That expands their footprint. It's not, as we read last week about the fair atmosphere, it keeps it all contained in one space per the restaurant. And again, they're gonna have to work with their neighbors down there to solution. But I'm just trying to say, all right, if we're gonna close it for a weekend and we're not gonna make it kind of go out into the street, why don't we just expand it? And if the neighbors really are there to see them succeed, why don't they just make their patios bigger that they are now? Instead of 3 parking spots, they get 6, and then it gives them more space to work with. So I'm looking for a solution for the downtown, but I'm also worried about that. So I want to stick with that contiguous, try to keep it all together.
Thank you,
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn.
Mayor and Council, yes, I would say that can happen. I'm not going to say it's not going to be a nightmare for Public Works, who has to deal with some of those barriers. And I'm sorry, Nick, but yeah, I think the concept of allowing the expansion, larger on weekends, smaller during the weekdays, perhaps as it needed to be, what could be done to allow either, I think expansion even farther out into the street, because we don't need as much of a traveled area, and then the sidewalks that go around the parklets. That could happen. The current sidewalk cafe ordinance does say you can't expand past the sides of your building, but I think we could overcome that in some way. So yes, I think what you're proposing could happen. Might take a little emergency ordinance language to make it happen at the following council meeting, but yes, it would happen. I think there's going to be some expense and time and effort put in to rearrange the configurations at the beginning and end of the weekends, but that's obviously a fiscal thing, not a legal thing.
Real quick, Mayor,
Yes, Dan Letitia.
if there was a change in the perimeter of the sidewalk cafes, would that require hearing and notice again?
Generally, the answer is yes, that as you saw when we did this before, there's a requirement in the sidewalk cafe ordinance that requires notice, public hearing. I believe it's a 10-day notice to get that accomplished. So yes, generally that would be required. I could look at if there's any way that we could forego that notice, but that's what we did last time when we allowed the expansion, was to stick to the process, give people an opportunity to object to it. That's why the notice period is there, in case somebody has a safety or other business concern, one of the side neighbors or something like that are not in favor of it. But yes, generally under the current ordinance, it would require a notice period.
In your honor.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn.
Follow up, and I am concerned about staff to be doing this every weekend, even if the weather doesn't look favorable. I don't want to be inconsistent, and that's why I think coming back with all, we still closing a street when we do that for if we have a process to go doing that for a street. I think it's only fair to the people in the community to make sure that they all get notice of that. And yes, we can reach out to some of the east side people, but I think the community needs to understand that the street closure it's just not easy just to shut it down every weekend from here till November. Now, if we do it one month and see how well it goes, kind of, or pick the weekends that they are, like the car show does. I think that's a better solution. Personally, I think the best way to do it is work with the DBA and say, work with your neighbors. Make your spot, parking spots, make it 6, and you have to work with your neighbor to see are they okay with expanding that spot for more places for them to serve. I think that's the easiest and best solution for the community that we represent. I'm really concerned about public works staff having to do this on the weekends because I got a note here, we got 105 miles of roads and residents and businesses to worry about, not just a block and a half. And I think that's important that we understand that we're going to make sure that we do this, we got to be careful because we might get that request coming from part of the other community saying, I want you to do that here too, so I can expand my footprint. So that's my only concerns. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other? Councilmember Fulch.
Your Honor, to Councilmember Vaughn's point, I think that that's a good one. What are the impacts to staff? And so what they're requesting is for the barriers just to be dropped off early on morning and put up, and then the DBA would bring them to the side to get them out of the way on a Sunday evening so the staff doesn't have to do that. Perhaps the solution is just leaving the signs down there. And because it's only one block area. I'm sorry, I don't know how many signs that is in total, but perhaps they can just leave the signs down there. I don't know if they need those signs during the work week for other purposes, but if they just leave the signs down there, maybe even the DBA could just move them back on Friday morning. So if Public Works drops them, perhaps it's just the once they get dropped, and then the business owners could move them back and forth so to limit the impact to staff. Because I think that's how they do the car show. The staff,
Yes.
Public Works
Yep.
staff drops them, and then the DBA removes them.
Yep.
Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council?
Nick Geiger would like to speak.
Okay,
Mayor.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of thoughts being thrown around here, and I'm trying to process a bit as we go, but originally came forward, took a look at how this might work and how traffic could be facilitated around. We are talking about something that's multiple days of impact over the weekend. And for that, the way that I had gone about trying to draft something together in terms of a enclosures setup would involve quite a bit more than been done for the car shows. We have, I think we've talked about this before, roughly 400 to 4,500 vehicles per day that come in and through the 2nd Street area. It's an average. Under normal times, it could be higher on weekends. I'm not sure. That's fairly significant. And when you do that, or when you have that sort of volume, it's really best practice to implement more of an official detour type of arrangement to guide that traffic around. So what we're looking at is it's advanced notification signs upstream and downstream of the impacted area, some trailblazing to lead them on the path around the area. And that sort of implementation is something that we need signage and devices from a third-party vendor. Public Works does not have all of that sort of equipment. And so I think there's quite a bit more to it than what may have been suggested earlier. And just a rough guess of what the staff time would be just for a simple detour, turning it on and off. I heard 2 people taking about an hour of time at the beginning and at the end of that weekend time period. My preference would be that the the activity that they would perform would be done on weekdays versus calling them in on a Sunday evening to pull it down. That's a call out and an overtime thing for us. To comment on the expansion of the parklets or the seating areas, it may sound simple. We've got to keep in mind that we still have to accommodate pedestrian rerouting around these areas. You see down there right now with the pylons and the ramps and such, they are not easy to just pick up and move. They are adhered down to the pavement surface. The ramps are, I think, a couple 100 pounds of steel. And so dragging that back and forth or pulling up the pylons to create a different perimeter or to make way for expanded seating that goes across where those boundaries have laid out, I really have no idea at this point in time what kind of effort that would take. I would just as soon probably consult with our traffic control vendor to see what kind of time they would expect to deal with that. Because once again, those are items and devices that Public Works does not have or deal with. We had to have that brought in special, and so I'm not going to have any answers today on what sort of time investment or additional cost this might be. I know the basic tour that we're talking about to have that equipment on site throughout the summer is probably on the order of $6,000 or $7,000, just based on some rough numbers. But adjusting individual parklet dining areas week in and week out is something I'm not going to be able to produce a figure on here now. So I just thought I'd better suggest this or comment on this. I'd be remiss if I didn't.
Thank you, Nick. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you. Certainly there's some challenges for, moving back and forth weekday to weekend for configuration. There's got to be some sort of solution that doesn't require so much so of the things that are difficult to do on one's own. So if those ramps are challenging to move, then perhaps they are placed in a position that allows for the expansion and the weekday footprint. So, as it stands right now, it sounds like they could probably use larger patio areas as it is, right? So during the weekday, and maybe that's just as Councilmember Vaughn had mentioned, and I'm not going to say what number makes sense, but 6 spots was mentioned. I think that's just doubling what the current one is. So perhaps width is their width, weekend or weekday, but how far into the street you're able to go is your weekend versus your weekday. And then that conserves the amount of moving of those significant or on the sides, right? Nick, if I'm understanding you correctly, this is to get over curbs and so forth. So that wouldn't change, and then we would just need additional fencing to go out into the street and increase capacity that way. So as far as signage and detours and whatnot, is it possible to have these things placed and be not permanent, but be there for the season, and then they just reflect the dates that they're in effect, rather than having to go out and put them out and take them down and put them out and take them down? I don't know the answer to. I'm looking at Nick for that.
Council member, it's a good question. I think could very well list the dates of effectiveness. How I think the response is how effective are they going to be at resonating with the motorists? And then through, are they going to read the dates versus just react to, oh, there's something orange with an arrow there? I think in general that would have a fairly limited impact versus just turning them sideways and essentially having them not the traffic as though it would be under normal conditions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Lund.
Your Honor.
Member Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. In regards to what Nick had just said about moving things, I did see what you're talking about, those orange, did you call them pylons? I don't know, that was for pedestrian traffic to like go around the busted nut.
Yeah.
What's the right word?
Stick delineators.
Oh boy, stick delineators. Okay. I did see those, and people were walking, within them, but I don't think received a text message from Tasha, and she said that they weren't looking to expand or change the patio footprint on the weekend, and so it wouldn't require moving any of that within the block that would be shut down. Just to clarify that none of those alterations that you were just suggesting about the moving of the ramps and things like that would have to take place during the weekend. Thanks.
I will add, just a bit. I was down there too, Councilmember Fulch, a few times this weekend, and my concern is street stays open. And at the time, Tasha was the only one serving. Now we're going to add El Mexican, Spiral, side. My concern would be the traffic going through and the walk traffic. I would be more concerned to close that street off. Liability reason. I know it's more work, and I just know that the DBA husbands and everyone will help to make this happen. I mean, I know it's always work on our public works, and everybody is overstressed and overworked, but I don't want to say it's a simple thing to do, but I think it's a safety thing to do as well for the pedestrians that are walking around down there. So I would be in favor of closing this street off for the weekends, but if we could think of a way to make it the simplest, as we're trying to do for all, and for our businesses. I think communication is going to be the big thing. It's no different than when the street or the car shows were, that the word got out. Hey, the streets are closed down there. I think that's up to us and our city communications, whoever that is going to be, and the business owners to throw that out there and say, this is the way it's going to be now. And communication is big. East Side, I've only had one call from them, and they're not going to be blocked off down there. It's going to disrupt that very minimal traffic. I'd love to see this happen for everybody. And, but also I do have safety concerns with traffic on that block. So, and like I said, I think the DBA will help in any way they can to move things back and forth, and we can all work together to do this.
Your Honor.
Lund?
Thank you. Maybe somebody can help me out here. Item number 4 on our memo, and it seems like they are asking for on the weekend, and so I'm not quite sure, based on what Councilmember Fulch just said, if that I'm starting to get confused of what the request is now. what's the function of blocking off the whole road if they're not going to change the footprint of their patios that they use on the weekdays?
Can I clarify on that?
Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. So what they're looking to do is just close off that block to allow for safe social distancing, because that's when they're hoping to get, I mean, obviously people go out to eat on the weekends, right? And so by closing down the block, it creates a safe pedestrian area, as Mayor Fassbender had suggested, for just the safety of walking about, but then also social distancing, so people feel more comfortable being in that. And then to allow the curbside, to go, so people can go over to the under the plaza area to be able to eat, because it would be kind of one again, I hate to use that word contiguous, but the area would be one safe zone to move freely about. And then people who can't actually get a place to sit because there's limited seating, then they could go to these picnic table areas and eat their food and still stay in the downtown area, so they don't have to go home to eat, and so that they can also visit the retail shops. And so I think that's what their hope is. Does that help, Councilmember Lund?
That's fine. That's the good explanation. It just seems like if I read number 4, it says they want their patio areas to be expanded on the weekends. So to me, sounds like the current patio areas that they have will get bigger, not necessarily that there's social distancing space. So my previous comment about allowing them to push their, expand their footprint outward into the street when it's closed, and not necessarily impact the width of it or whatnot, seems to contradict that. Now, if you're saying that they don't actually want larger patio spaces, they just want larger area to have people be able to walk.
Fassbender,
Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would suggest, since there are representatives from the DBA on the call, to ask for them specifically to give what their intentions are, if you'd like to ask a direct question to them in regards to that.
Sure. John, can you help me out? Is the President, Tasha, on?
Yeah, I've got Tasha Lacey. Tasha just raised her hand, so I'll bring Tasha into the meeting if that's okay, Mayor.
That'd be great. Thank you. Welcome,
Okay.
Tasha.
Tasha, I think you're muted. I'm not sure if you can hear us or not.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. The computer just did something weird.
There you go. Welcome, Tasha.
Hi. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate what we're looking for, because obviously I probably have one of the smaller spaces on the block. And for us, people just tend to come in and some people just aren't aware of what they need to be doing, because there's so many rules now. So for us, it would be nice to have an area to kind of have people wait outside and still social distance. That for me is huge, because, I'm already trying to control a small space inside and outside. If I have a space for them to wait outside, I think it would be helpful for me, and people would feel more comfortable coming as well. Pretty much what Tina said kind of hit the nail on the head as far as what we're looking for. I mean, if people can have a space to wait outside, otherwise they congregate on the sidewalk in front of these stores waiting to come in and waiting down. And I just would like to be able to have a space to spread it out, especially on the weekends. Obviously they're busier and people just want to get out right now, but and I have signs up everywhere, but they still I would just like to have a little bit more space to be able to send people. And I think all restaurants would, downtown, because our spaces are not that huge.
Your Honor.
Tasha, I think I'm hearing Councilmember Liefeld's voice.
Correct. Thank you, Your Honor. So I do have a question for Tasha with the DBA. Back to Council Member Lund's point. Number 4 is where I'm kind of getting caught up as well in regards to think what I just heard Tasha say, and please, Tasha, correct me if I'm wrong here. You are looking to expand your seating area as well on weekends. Is that what I just heard you say?
For me, I am just looking for a place for people to stand and wait, or if they want to stand outside and just hang out. And it's a safety thing too, more than anything, like Mary said. I mean, I was down there obviously this is our first weekend. And it's just very challenging because the traffic down there is crazy. It really is crazy. I cannot believe all fast people drive through there and don't know where to send people because we don't have that much space, you know, and have enough room. And obviously I'm tackling now going inside. So it's, if I can send them outside and say, can you just go stand outside and social distance, it will be much safer and better for everyone downtown.
So thanks for the clarification, because the wording in number 4 is it's different than what we're hearing you say, which is good. Back to Mayor Mary's point in regards to, I could get on board for closing that section of street for pedestrian safety, absolutely. And to give people a bigger area to congregate, but to spread out. But that wouldn't include drinking or increasing patio space. It would just be, if I'm hearing everyone correctly, the patio spaces, the street spaces would stay the same. You can only drink inside that.
Yep.
But where the rest of the area is open, people can safely walk around. They can safely get to other businesses. They can safely cross the street. So how we go forward with moving this forward, but the wording in number 4 is not, I guess, not what we're looking at all. So I would be definitely up for this idea if someone can figure out how to word
and right
it
now
into.
we're just trying to compromise and figure out what's best. Yes, that was the ask. If people wanted to come into, say, El Mexican, they don't have their patio set up. I'm not sure when they're going to have their patio set up. If they needed to stand outside and wait to get in with a drink, would it be okay if it wasn't fenced in? So yes, that was our request. But at this point, and I understand all the legal stuff. I understand all of that. Obviously, I own a bar and I get all of it. But I also think that we are very willing to work with what needs to get done to make sure that safety place here, because it makes me very nervous. It does, because when we have all these restaurants on the same block for the most part, or a majority of them, it gives me anxiety. It really does, because I just feel like people need a place to go, or I need a place to put them to stand, waiting to get in somewhere. And I don't want them blocking other businesses' doorways either. You know, I want them to be able to stand somewhere else if needed. We can all manage our businesses safely.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Balsanic.
Yeah, thank you. If I could ask Tasha a question, and I hope it doesn't sound like it's nitpicking. Tasha, hi. Good to be talking with you again. Looking forward to one of those great hamburgers with the fried.
Okay, let's keep going, Joe. Sorry.
And everything else. Sorry. Okay. The quick question, Tasha, is if people, I'm assuming people are waiting in a designated area for an order to go. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yes. Or if we're waiting to seat them. You know, we have kind of both things going on. And the biggest thing I noticed last Wednesday when we finally had a sunny day to seat people, it I looked down the block and I didn't even know what to do. I was just like, I don't even I just want everybody to spread out. And people, people get it, but in the same breath, they're still standing in a line and gathering, waiting to come in to get food or waiting to, they don't know. I mean, I have a sign at my front gate now, which I had, stating that, please go in to see the bartender,
Right.
but a lot of people just stood there because they didn't, people don't follow directions. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Is there one more quick question? Is there a chance that these people waiting in the queue would have an alcoholic beverage? Could they order from the bar and then go out and stand there?
Well, that was our hope. Yes, that was our hope in having this area just so that they could stand with a drink, have a drink while they wait, be able to social distance,
Right.
and then come in when they could.
Right.
We're not looking to have a party. We're not looking to have any of that. We are just looking to spread people out and have more space to do that because there are so many restaurants on our block.
It's like any restaurant, you walk in and they're saying you're going to have to wait 20 minutes and everybody kind of stands around in one area. Yeah.
Right.
I get it. Thank you.
I don't think any of us I think we're all wanting to, everybody just wants to be out right now, but we need to be able to control it. And if we don't have enough space to do that, it makes all of us nervous as business owners.
Right. Okay.
I
Thanks.
just want people, yes, you're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Looking for Councilmember Lund. Yes.
So if we were to go with the road closure for the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and place seating underneath the bridge, picnic tables or whatever, those picnic tables at this point would not be able to have alcohol consumed at them. But yet it would be a place to be able to eat, be able to wait, and so forth as well with seats. Not everybody's necessarily going to want to stand around either, probably, but it sounds like that would be a good starting point to get us closer to what these restaurants and bars are looking for. And as we know, things are constantly changing, right? I mean, we've seen the capacity indoors change since we've had this conversation. Probably things are going to change again, probably in another few weeks. We don't know. So maybe just getting something going sooner than later. And if we need to revisit it. But I would suggest that a motion that we close the 2nd Street, that specified area that's in the memo on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. Place seating underneath the bridge without alcohol consumption outside of the restaurant and bar patio areas.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Motion by Councilmember Lund and a second by Councilmember Balsonic.
And I have a question now that it's on the floor.
And council discussion.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're talking about Friday through Sunday. Can we get a designated time? Are we talking noon Friday to 10 o'clock on Sunday? What are we talking about here? We need to be specific. Otherwise, we're kind of, fast and loose with putting the barriers up.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Balsonic. Tasha, are you still on? Can you clarify?
I am, yes. As far as parking downtown, I mean, just as when I put barricades up and signs up for car shows, it's easiest to get down there early in the morning. We've spoke to a few people on the block that don't have restaurants, and they were fine with this. Lori from Fifth Ave and Alyssa from Creative Hair, because getting cars moved it's challenging. So for me, it's best to do it early in the morning. And like I said, I've spoke to some other business owners that are willing to help move barricades. as well. I mean, I know they're not light, but
Yep. Can you give a specific time for Friday?
Thank you.
I mean, I guess I would say 7 a.m. Place you'd have to put signs up probably to do it later, like 10 a.m. or something.
So put signs up at 7 and closure at 7, or put signs up at 7 stating a different time of closure?
I would say just do the closure at the same time.
Okay, so that does concern me a little bit, just for simple purposes of workers going to work or whatever.
We can do later too. I think we were just thinking that that's easiest because of the cars that parked down
Sure.
there and some sit there for a while.
Honor,
And I get that. Councilmember Lund?
sorry, I'd like to, if it's all right with you, I'd like to hear what Nick Eggert would have to recommend on that, since he'd be directing that. See what his thoughts are on the proper process.
Sure,
Yeah.
Nick, can you, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, council member. I would tend to agree that an early morning implementation is best, because if we get into anything that's out of the hours of 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., I think it is, we have some parking going on the street, and then we're having to post as well and saying, you got to vacate by X time. Whereas if we have it starting out before there's any parking activity occurring in downtown, because they haven't been allowed to park overnight, then we don't have that problem to solve, in addition to putting all the stuff out. So I tend to like that early morning beginning of the implementation. And then I would, in turn, while I have a moment here, I would say the same goes for removing the detour in the early morning of Monday. Again, I looking at having staff involved with this, and I think that's where the duty of putting these things up and taking them down should stay, as city staff or our vendor that's helping with traffic control. That should occur outside of weekend hours, where we're not
Right.
calling somebody down special. Makes sense.
Okay,
Your Honor?
thank you, Nick. Councilmember Liefeld?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yep.
So reading the location, your concern, Mayor, regarding traffic going to work, the access, the 61 bridge access there on the side of Fireside, that section of road will remain open so people can travel under the
Yes.
bridge to go up? Thank you. And then my other point I just wanted to make, just because we've heard from people about, we've even said it ourselves, what about the rest of the town? I just want to throw out the idea or the understanding that Second Street is unique in regards to there are no parking lots. With everybody, I believe I've been trying to rack my brain around town to think who wouldn't have the ability to expand themselves. Every other business I can think of can expand themselves into private parking lots.
Correct.
With the exception of, say, the Cub. I know even the Midtown area, that's, private. So I would like to let people know that we are, concerned and wanting to make sure we're helping the entire community. This section of the community poses a different issue for us because of the fact that we have no parking lot. There is no space for them to go out. So, when it might seem like we're mulling this over and over and over, wanting to make sure that we're making the best decision for the residents of, the east side of downtown there, as well as the businesses and as well as all the people who are going to come downtown to shop and to eat. And back to your point that we need to make sure they're safe. And I'm on board with this completely for the fact that the safety, I drove through there a couple times as well and was like, oh my gosh, there's people right here on the side
Yeah.
of my car.
Yeah.
So it was fun because I knew them. But I was concerned about that. So I'm happy that we're having this conversation, but do want people to understand why we're so, centered on talking about Second Street. And it just poses a problem, unlike the rest of the town does in regards to expansion. So thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you,
Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld. Any other discussion?
Your
Your
Honor.
Honor.
Councilmember Lund, I'm hearing your voice.
Thank you.
There you
Mine is just a quick question. We haven't talked about residents that are in the area. We did talk about people trying to get to and from work, but specifically people that may live directly above these businesses. Is there there is no overnight parking on Second Street, correct? So there's people that live in those apartments aren't going to be adversely affected by their parking arrangements, if I'm correct. Anybody answer that?
I think that's understood. There is no overnight parking on Second Street, but it does happen.
Just looking to clarify that there's no arrangements with any of the apartments that they can use any of the stalls for their own parking.
I think, Nick, could you answer that?
And just echo that with overnight parking being prohibited, I would think the effect would be pretty minimal. Anyone who is living in those tenant spaces and has a vehicle is kind of expected to be in either some space off the back alley that they might have allocated to them, or one of the lots that has a 72-hour maximum on it.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. Tasha, I'd make a suggestion. This is what we do for Gobblegate. I actually put a notification in all the apartments upstairs, and it just says, this street will be closed, blah, 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 blah. It might be just a kind gesture to do that for the apartments upstairs, just so that they're aware, because we don't want to get this blast of comments from apartments tenants upstairs saying, oh my gosh, what's going, so, or just try to make everyone aware, or the building sellers, if they know there's apartments upstairs, they can talk to their people. Just, that's what I'm talking about, the communication, get it going, and just make sure that everybody knows what's going on.
Yes, I used to do this for the street dance, so no problem.
Perfect.
Your Honor. Your
With
Honor.
that, Councilmember Vaughn, is it?
Vaughn. Yep.
Okay.
I could just need a few clarifying points here. Where Lund has made a motion to close, could you identify I'm kind of speaking on behalf of staff here. What are the streets? Where do we see the barriers being? That's the first point. The second point is we heard pedestrians, but I do see other parklets down the street that are we going to close it off for those pedestrians also? Or is it due just to the bar and restaurants of this one block or block and a half going towards the Onion and the Legion? And then the third one is one thing that I never hear, and I just it would help me vote for this, is the Downtown Business Association. We never get the DBA voted and it passed 24-14 or whatever. We just get, we want. But I just want to make sure that all the DBA, if it's a business owner or the person that owns a building that rents to someone, make sure that they have a voice in this, so we don't get the call saying, I can't believe you shut that down. And I'm still worried about the residents through the community driving around it. But these are all the concerns that I don't think that we need the clarification of where the streets will be shut down. And I want clarification from the DBA that they did talk to everyone that is going to be affected down there. Because otherwise I feel like, going back to my analogy of the homeowner association, we may be in the middle of it by allowing it. And is it going to be all the way till November 1st? Or is it going to be up till August 1st, or whenever we can allow it to say, let's take that away now? Or are we just putting flexibility in there? Questions in there, but I think the first one would be, what are we going to lock down yet?
That would be your motion, Councilmember Lund?
Yep, Your Honor. My thought, and thank you for asking the clarifying point because I guess I didn't call that out specifically. My understanding is that it would be from where Fireside and Lock and Dam are on 2nd Street up to Sibley Street and then back to the American Legion, Sibley Street. So that L-shaped area.
Just to clarify, Your Honor, Councilor Lund, will we block off the city parking lot then? If someone comes in the parking lot, will they be able to do a so-called U-turn or will they back out of that lot if it's blocked down?
Well, there's two entrance and exit points, right? So I would assume that they would just use the one over by the
Ramsey.
the restroom and so forth. Street. Thank you.
Yep. And they could take that whole U-turn to get there. Or
Yep.
does
I
that help,
get that.
Councilmember Vaughn? Sorry.
So I'll let staff get, I guess, I seen it on a piece of paper where it was, but I'll put trust that we're going to get the right thing for staff, that all businesses aren't affected. So, thank you.
So can I speak real quick? Sorry,
Sure.
this is Tasha again.
Tasha? Yep.
So the last ask, we actually took the block of the onion off to solve any detours or any issues that we were going to cause. So we only have block 1, which I've always called block 1, which is from the Fireside Lock and Dam until Level Up State Farm. So just that block.
Your
So
Honor.
just Sibley Street.
Not
Or, I'm sorry, just to Sibley,
just to Sibley, correct?
but not including Sibley.
Correct. We changed
Okay.
it. Is it
Okay.
is that what we did, John? On the last letter?
Yeah, that's correct. The request that the DBA has is just 2nd Street between, I guess it'd be the entrance ramp where Fireside is all the way to Sibley Street. Sibley Street would be open and the entrance ramps onto 61 would be open.
Correct. Thank you.
Mayor?
Nick, is that your voice?
Good. I do have a graphic drafted. I'll say again, it is a draft. I can share the screen. I've not accounted here for the fact that the DBA is no longer requesting the Sibley Street part of the closure, but it might help to illustrate this a bit. So if you'd allow me to share my screen, I can do that.
Great. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick.
I might need John or Dan to allow me to share it here. It says,
Yeah, I think I just made you co-host, Nick, so you should see it now.
Okay. Dan had to step out.
Yeah. Bear with me. I'm on 2 different computers here, so I don't know if it'll
Okay.
work. I'm sorry. Oops. I'm going to log out of that one and log back in there, John. I'm still getting a message that says I can't share the screen. So,
Okay, either that or if you want to email it to me.
yeah,
I think
I just emailed it to you.
I'll do that.
Councilmember Vaughn, I saw your head pop up. Do you want to?
Okay, I think I've got it right here, actually.
I don't need to see it if staff knows what they're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, Nick, I've got an older copy that showed both of them shut down. Was there an updated one, Nick?
No, that's probably
Okay,
the
let me
one.
put this one up here then. Hold on. See that?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
Yes.
So this
Okay.
was done a bit on presumption that this would get considered or enacted. So you'll see I've got a lot of notes and arrows and whatnot on there. But I think in general, it does reflect what Tasha just mentioned there a moment ago, where the first block would be closed and the detour would begin to send traffic that's inbound towards downtown up the ramp road to 3rd Street and over to Sibley and then back north towards 2nd.
Okay.
east or west in and through there. And then that red hashed area that's shown on Sibley North of Second would not be part of what I believe is being proposed here. So hopefully that helps.
Does that help, Council?
A little bit.
That's what I needed, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Council?
Your Honor.
Sure.
Okay.
Councilmember Balsanic?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so John, what's the staff recommendation on this? And Attorney Dan, the legal conclusion on this?
Yeah. Well, council member, I'll start and probably rely on others to help me out here. What we're looking at specifically here is the street closure aspect of it. And as we had pointed out in our staff report, we're recommending denial of it. But with looking at some of the implications of doing it, closed every weekend, effect on other people around there, effect on traffic in the area. Sure that people within the downtown that aren't restaurant owners that would be affected would be supportive of it. Granted that the DBA has amended the request that they have had to limit the area since we first made that initial recommendation on that. I think it's fair to say, at least from my standpoint, alcohol is a big concern to me as far as open this up and the ability that I don't want it to be misconstrued. And I think the discussion today, I think people are clear about this, that if this is closed off here, this is not inclusive of liquor changes at this point. And even if there was a liquor change that would be considered, the ability for restaurants to serve in this area is questionable and quite limited. So those would be my comments. I know Nick, from a practitioner standpoint, would be the one that would be bearing the brunt with his staff to do this, and pointed out some issues related to that. Dan Flegel, from a legal standpoint, I'm not sure what else there would be on that one. So perhaps I'd yield to either Nick or to Dan Flegel if they'd have any further comment on this.
Mayor and council, to the extent that we're not changing the areas that can be served for on sale and we're not allowing an open container district as part of this, I don't have a problem with it. I agree there may be a potential risk abatement by keeping the cars out of there in busy times. So I don't have a problem with that. It's easy for me to say that when the hard work is going to come on Public Works, but I don't have a problem with it as long as we're not changing the alcohol. The alcohol changes are what gives me the heartburn.
I have a question for Tasha in terms of the DBA responsibilities. Can you, with your restaurants, designate when alcohol is sold that it is off sale or on sale?
No, I don't, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, it can you're saying you're not doing that, or it can't be done?
Are you asking me if I can specify if it's off sale or on sale?
Right.
If it's off sale, I mean, I think that ends tomorrow, doesn't it, John?
Tomorrow, Tasha?
The off sale?
We had made inquiries into the League of Minnesota Cities yesterday to get clarification on that. Some of the information received from the attorneys there is that the off sale ability would end. Granted, I've heard differing things on that one, so I'm uncertain. So I throw that out as a note of caution at this standpoint that may be the case. But Dan has also looked at this as well, Dan Flegel. I'm not sure if he has any more clarification on that, but the waters are muddy at this point, and it could potentially end.
I agree. The league.
I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
I agree. The league's current position is that it will end with the inside opening of the restaurants tomorrow. That has not been clarified by the governor or the legislature, so we're relying on an attorney opinion there, which could change. And so I can't say definitively one way or another.
Okay, then I'm just going to say that that's a moot point. We're just going to follow whatever the directive is from the state in terms of on sale and off sale. That helps the business owners out. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Liefeld, did you want to speak?
No, Your
Liefeld.
Honor.
Oh,
No,
okay,
Your
I
Honor.
thought I heard your voice earlier. Any other council discussion? The start of a conversation. I'll know you want to speak. So there is a motion on the table. And there is a second. So Clerk Flatten, could you call the roll, please?
Member Vaughn,
Yes.
Member Fulch,
Yes.
Balsonic,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Thank you, John. You you're continuing on?
Yes, that was item number 4 on the request. There are 6 items altogether in the request that the DBA had. One relating to liquor, the other one related to license fees, one related to planter bump outs, and then to no smoking, no vaping. So those items remain from the original request from the DBA.
Your Honor, this is Councilmember Fulch.
Yes, Councilmember Fulch.
Your Honor, I'd like to take up the item on the flower planters. The request for the flower planters. I guess what been clear as to what's the history about what's been going on, and so I had to talk it through with Tasha because it was a little choppy to me, and so I guess I'm going to tell the group what I was told, and just to clarify where we are with this. And so,
So you're
Tasha,
referring to number 5.
yeah, the flower
Okay.
planters. Yep.
Okay.
And so Tasha had informed me that the DBA had to withdraw the in-kind donation that they were going to make towards the flower planters, which was $2,500. And we have been budgeting the last couple of years as a city to plant the flower, the big pots that are on the corners, and then also the hanging baskets. And so it was never a requirement that the DBA give that $2,500. It was just an in-kind contribution towards that amount, a gesture of good faith. And so considering everybody was shut down, the DBA had informed the city that they weren't able to make that in-kind donation. And so what I didn't understand was then a decision was somehow made not to plant any of the flowers then because the DBA wasn't able to make that in-kind donation. And so when the DBA came forward and had asked for tabletops to be placed on those planters, it was only because they weren't going to be planted and they didn't want to see them unused. And so they thought that they could use it as extra curbside to go eating areas. And then when the council had said, okay, we'll do that, but we don't, you guys have to put the tabletops on top of the flower pots, then that was more than they were able to give on, considering that would take some, engineering to figure out how to do that and such. And so then, so now this last request is coming forward because they don't have the ability to create tabletops for those planters. And so they were asking for at least one of the large planters, because there's groups of 3, at least one of them to be planted because they look terrible just sitting there empty as they are. And then in our last council meeting, there was a group that had come forward where they had taken up some donations to be able to plant planters. And in the meantime, what they did was they had purchased some smaller flower pots to go on the patios since there was no decision on what to do with the larger city-owned flower pots. And so I just wanted to clarify that's where we're at, and if Tasha's still on the line to verify that. So that's why they're asking now for at least one of those pots to be planted. So they're just not such an eyesore and nothing's being done with them.
Correct. I think we were just looking for one of them to be planted and try to make them look better. I know that for the city, it's very challenging to move them all, but they are an eyesore just sitting empty too. So we were just trying to basically come up with some sort of compromise on just planting at least one.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you. To make it simple, and I think we've done this every year, we've gone through this on the finance committee. Put the planters there. I think the city should plant them and maintain them. Even if we don't have the staff this year, we can contract it out again. Mechanisms to take donations, so if people do want to donate it, like we've done before, we collect them. City should plant all 3 of them. We shouldn't move them. We should maintain them, and we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. That's my motion.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn, and seconded by Councilmember Fulch. Any other discussion?
Your Honor, please.
Whoops.
Oh, go ahead.
Dan Waticha?
I just wanted a little bit of clarification here. The amount budgeted for the flower planters plus the amount that might have come from the DBA was still not sufficient to cover the quote we received for having it contracted out. So we can certainly plant them, but recognize we're running over budget.
And a part of that budget is the watering, which is part of the budget.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Lund?
has all of that $25,000 that was given through HEDRA for the parklets been used?
Council member, the majority of it has. Frankly, I've been stretching a bit with the use of that money. They were really deemed for parklets. I've expanded that into the barricades. The maintenance of the flowers, I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that as a staff decision at this standpoint, but we've used most of that money.
I understand it maybe isn't a staff decision, but maybe it's something that HEDRA could consider.
Your Honor?
Yep, I don't know. Just a question.
Sure. I can't tell who is on, sorry.
That was Councilmember Brax.
Oh, Councilmember Brax, welcome.
Hi. Yeah, I've been a part of the conversations about these planters for several years, and we need to take care of our own property. I mean, I just think leaving them empty, they're ours. We need to maintain them. We need to plant them. We need to water them. We got to figure it out. And we go around and around about this every year. And I understand this year is really wonky, but we got to take care of our own stuff. And I don't think it's fair to just leave them sit there. So I agree with what Councilmember Vaughn said 100%. And if we're going to do something different or we're going to rearrange this in the future, I don't think we have enough time to do that right now. Then that's a separate conversation, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councilmember Brax. Councilmember, sorry, I'll go with Councilmember Balsanic.
Yes. Question for the DBA folks. Would you be willing to make your donation again, considering that we're going to plant these things? Is there enough money in your budget to do such a thing?
Do not think so. I would have to have this discussion, but we haven't even asked for our DBA dues at this point because businesses, a lot are just getting open. So I would say no at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor.
Lund.
Thanks. Just to be clear, my suggestion or question regarding HEDRA was not that we don't go forward with this. It was just if that was a way to shore up any gaps, as Dan had mentioned, that we have in the budget. But I'd like to just take a vote on this if we could.
Sure.
Your Honor, question?
Councilmember Leifeld?
Thank you. And I apologize, I had to step away real quick. Did we discuss, I don't know what happened with Susie Matthews Dillon after the previous meeting. Has that been discussed while I had stepped away?
No,
No, but those items, they have already been planted.
That's already been done? Okay, thank you, Your Honor. So it's mute to this particular point.
Tasha, I mean, help me out. I'm certain they have already done their planting, correct?
Correct. They actually
none of-
brought
Yep.
plants on, I don't remember what day it was, and put them in all the parklets for us.
They're not in the big pots.
Correct.
Or the
Because,
plant, the
because
seed
she,
plants.
because she did not get an answer from city yet.
Sure. Yep.
Oh,
Does that clarify, Councilmember Liefeld?
so where are the plants? If they're not.
They're at the different businesses.
They're in
So
the
they're-
parklets, Lisa. They're in the different parklets.
Got you, okay.
Yep.
And that's because there was no response from the city on that?
Correct. That was their decision because she wanted to move quickly.
Okay. So Councilmember Vaughn made a motion, Councilmember seconded it. We've had our discussion. Clerk Flatten, would you call the roll, please?
Vaughn,
Can we please repeat the motion on the floor?
Sure. Councilmember Vaughn?
My motion was that the city moves forward, tracking out, knowing we're going over budget, to plant and maintain the flower pots for the rest of the summer.
The second, Your Honor, this is Tina.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Councilmember Fultz seconded it. Now, Clerk Flatten, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Member Fulch,
Yes.
Member Balsanic,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Member Liefeld,
Yes?
Member Brock,
yes.
Fassbender.
Yes. Okay, thank you. That'll be great. John, your next explanation of any of,
Yeah, well, going down the list, we've been kind of hopscotching around a little bit here. What we've got left is the emergency ordinance. We've got the curbside to go and the no smoking, no vaping, I believe. That's what we have left.
Your Honor, this is Councilmember Fulch.
sure, Councilmember Fulch?
The other item was number 3, waiving of all citywide on sale liquor
missed
license
that one.
fees for 2020. And that was citywide. It wasn't just for the Downtown Business Association that was being asked. I think that I'd like to make a motion to waive the 2020 on sale liquor license fees for all of the city establishments that would be required by law to do so. I think it's very clear when you look at the data that this first wave is going through.
Second, Your Honor?
Yes, okay, let's get a second. Okay.
And so what I was saying is just that the first wave data shows that it's going to go through October. And then so we could start to recover in November. However, as we all know, the flu comes about that time and they're predicting that there could be a second wave. And so there's a good chance that the restaurants will be at limited capacity for the remainder of the year.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. I heard a double second, so I have to ask for clarification.
Me, but I
Your
will
Honor,
second it.
Councilmember Liefeld.
It was Councilmember Liefeld seconded.
Honor?
Discussion, yes. Councilmember Balsanic.
Yes, our previous vote on the licenses was, if somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but we were suspending the collection of licenses through the 15th of July, at which time we would revisit another extension. And I'd like to stick with that original motion and vote that was done in favor of that, at least for now. That gives us another 45 days to evaluate what's going on. It's not out of any, deference to the business owners. It's just, we need to see where the economy is going. I would rather not commit to all the way to the end of the year. We have a president who says we're coming out of this. It's going to be better than ever. And yet we've got scientists who are saying, no, it's going to have a surge in September. So let's stay with the original passing of the motion that was done, I believe, a couple of months ago now, and revisit the waiver of licenses on July 15th. So I would vote against this.
Your Honor,
Okay, any other
Councilmember Fulch.
member Fulch?
Putting politics aside and what the president does or doesn't say, if you look at what the state of Minnesota's analysis has been through Minnesota Management and Budget, it is very clear, if you take the time to read the executive summary even, and that information was provided by City Administrator Wojciechek, as to what the analysis is for the state of Minnesota. And the state of Minnesota is experiencing a huge dip through 2020, and a recovery best case scenario seems to be that would be the second half of 2021. And there was like a 20% confidence level or something like that. I mean, it could still even go south from there. And so there's a lot of unknowns. But what was clear is that the predictions are pretty dismal for the next 12 months from today. And so, and if you look at the projections of the spread of COVID, the bell curve shows that that here in Minnesota, and this was pre all of the riots and protests and all that jazz. What we were going to experience was that we were going to see a spike at the beginning of August, and we went dovetail until the end of October, early November. And so looking at what we do know scientifically based in economic models that the state of Minnesota is producing shows very clearly that we are not going to see any kind of recovery anytime soon. And most certainly we're not going to see any change in the economy in the next 45 days. And since the business owners do need to plan, accordingly, and they're doing their best, I think that it's a good faith to, at this point, we already have a first and a second, and just to take the vote and see it through. Thank you.
Well, other council discussion.
Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Council member Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll make it quick. I agree with Councilmember Balsonic. I think we voted once on this. I think we should wait till July 15th. And I really like our finance committee to look at this when we meet coming up here. We're spending a lot of money this morning, and we may not see actual dollars. We're going to see some staff costs that are getting diverted here. And as we just voted, we're over budget on some other items. I just really think we need to play this one out. If we waive fees, we got to ask, where is that money going to come from? What else are we going to give up that is going to replace these fees inside that budget? I think the finance committee can talk about it, but I want some data in front of us too that's going to say, this is the impact by us making this that's going to cost the city of Hastings a request from the DBA for the entire community. How are we going to backfill those dollars? We charge those fees for a reason, and I think we got to realize where that money's going to come from. So that's my only concern. I think July 15th is a great time to revisit them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Lund.
Your Honor, I guess I was just contemplating an alternative solution that maybe what we do is delay payments until later on, and I don't have a specific date, but September or something like that, and then have a better idea at that point in time what whether the fees should be forgiven or not. But it's not the motion on the table, I guess. So agree that we would revisit this in July. If we're able to make it work at that point in time, then I think we need to do what's right for the entire city, for the budget, but also for these businesses. So I guess I would support holding off as we originally agreed, but in earnest looking at this and seeing if we can make it work.
Thank you,
Your Honor.
Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Liefeld?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would agree to that we could revisit this. I do have a question in regards, because the way it's written referred to downtown, we of course are referring to the entire city. I do have a question, however, and I don't know how we separate this, so this might be able to get us more information when we revisit this in July, that if this were to include liquor stores, I'm not sure that they've been negatively impacted. So if they have, I don't know. I'm not a, economic, I don't understand all that stuff. That's not my area. But I'd want to know that before we throw that on the table. This is an idea to help businesses that have been negatively impacted by this terrible virus. So I think, although I seconded it because we need to move it forward, I would vote against this at this time so that we can get that, as Councilmember Vaughn put, get that data, because I want to make sure that we're really helping the businesses that need it. And this would maybe give us that opportunity. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld.
Mayor Fassbender, this is Councilmember.
Councilmember Fulch?
Just to clarify, it wasn't including the liquor stores. It was only for the restaurants that required the on-sale liquor license fees. And so it doesn't include, I think we had 3 liquor stores and they wouldn't be included in this. It would just be the restaurants and like Spiral, the brewery, for on-sale sales. And we didn't say that we were, just to clarify here, when we made that motion to hold off on payment until July 15th, it wasn't that we were going to revisit it on July 15th. It was just to kick the can down the road so that we could have this conversation again as to what it was we were going to do with these on-sale liquor licenses, to determine that at a later date. And it's already June 1st. And so this is, what is it? Today's June 8th or June 9th. And so it's not even 45 days down the road. It's like 38 or something like that. It's just a month away. And so I'm sorry, unless there's an act of God, nothing is going to change in the next 30 days, realistically. And so it just seems to me like it's just, again, delaying. And just to clarify that, I think it was $86,000 or $87,000 if all of the restaurants had this fee waived, and that would be distributed evenly amongst 2 fiscal years. It was my understanding that half of it would be for this fiscal year, and then the next would be for the next or the 2021. So I'm not exactly sure what the fiscal year is that's being impacted. I just would have to ask staff as to clarify on that matter, but that's how I was understanding it, and I could be wrong.
Okay.
Your Honor.
There is a motion. Yes, Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Fultz, thank you for that clarification. So this is, again, not my area, but on-sale liquor license fees only does not include the off-sale at any of the locations. That changes everything for me. Thank you, Councilmember Fultz.
Okay.
Your
There's a
Your Honor.
second. Oh, Councilmember Lund.
I'd actually like some clarification on the years that this impacts.
Mayor
This is a two-year coverage, or what? Councilmember Fulch made it sound like there was 2 fiscal years.
But I
Can you
wasn't clear
please
about.
explain?
Clerk Flatten will.
The loss would fall in 2020. It's a 1-year impact. The license process 2 years, but the revenue is all collected in 2020.
Thank you, Clerk Flatten. Does that help, Trevor? Hearing you.
It all in 2020 and get 2 years of coverage. Is that correct?
It would be just about a $90,000 revenue loss for this year.
So why the whole thing then, if maybe we look at half? Is there a reason why 2 years of coverage is being requested? to be waived?
Mayor Fassbender.
Council, or yes, Clerk Flatten?
Liquor licenses run July 1st to June 30th. Liquor, people that have on sale licenses pay half their fee in June and they pay half their fee in December. So the amount that's due for them on July 15th is only half of the $4,400, it's $2,200. But all that revenue is incurred and is expected into the city in this year. That help?
Yes.
So
Okay.
Julie, it's a situation in which they're prepaying the fees for a license that extends out for 6 months to a year. Is that be?
So what was deferred to July 15th was the first half of their license fee, was normally due on June 1st. The council elected to have that due on July 15th, the $2,200.
Your Honor, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion on the floor.
Okay,
I would like to amend the motion that it is the July payment that is being waived.
Council, so then I'll need a second on that
Second.
amendment.
I will second it. This is
Okay, Councilmember Brox. So discussion with that.
Well, Your Honor, Joe Belsack,
Councilmember Balsanic.
we're being redundant. We're already have something on the books that says we're going to revisit this on the 15th of July. I just don't see taking a vote on this amendment or even the main motion in favor is germane. We've already set our direction for us, so I would vote against the amendment and still vote against the main motion.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Balsanic. Councilmember Brox.
And I understand what you're saying, Councilmember Balsanic, and I respect that. I think for me, Councilmember Fulch's point about planning is important, because I think the thing that people are struggling with, especially restaurants, is the uncertainty. Things are changing constantly. And if they know in advance this isn't something they're going to have to worry about, I think that just relieves some stress from our business owners who want to pay it. I think Councilmember Lund's solution is a good one, because it doesn't cut all the revenue for the year. It's some of the revenue that we would have collected on July 15th. We're making a decision so they can plan, we can plan. We can have further discussions about what the rest of the year looks like. But it is important that if we can provide some certainty to our business owners that we can talk about it, we're talking about it already, and help them plan so they know they don't have to pay that on July 15th. So I support this. I support Councilmember Lund's amendment and the motion.
Your Honor, with that explanation and respecting of what Councilmember Brox just said, I now change my mind. I will vote for the amendment and I'll vote for the main motion.
Final discussion on L. Oh, Attorney Dan?
You'd want to now call for a roll call vote on the
Sure.
amendment, and if
On
that
the amendment?
passes, then
Yep.
call for a roll call vote on the main motion as amended, which would be the first half of the license fees being waived.
Sure, thank you. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll. On the amendment.
Yes.
Member Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Balsanic.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
Member Liefeld.
Yes.
Member Brox.
Yes.
Fassbender.
Yes. So the amendment has passed. Now can we have a roll call for the motion?
The motion as amended.
As amended, yes.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Member Balsanic.
Yes.
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 Member Brock.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Okay, we're whittling down. John? Let's see.
Yep, I think we're down to half. We're 3 down, 3 to go, I think is what I've got on the scorecard here. So curbside to go, liquor, and temporary no smoking, no vaping is what I have left on the DBA request.
Councilmember Brox.
So I have a question about the curbside to go, and this may be for someone who is an expert in their business. I am not, but it seems to me that as I've observed some of the businesses that are more fully going to open, that they're whittling down or diminishing their curbside to go service. So I'm wondering if this item is still germane, if it's still applicable and we need to talk about it, or is it not at all important given the fact that the situation has changed?
Your Honor, I'd like John to elaborate on what that item is before we motion.
Sure, council member. I can provide an explanation, albeit I know this has been a little bit of a mystery to me on this one as well. The way that I understand it is there would be designated areas within the downtown that people could consume food to go. So people would go to a restaurant, have a to-go order, and there would be designated places within the downtown area in which they could consume that. So I imagine this is different or more expansive than what is there presently, which is the expanded seating under the bridge, the ability to eat down at the riverfront. I believe this is something more than that, but I think the concept of that might be similar. The question that comes up in my mind on that is, alcohol service, obviously, the way the ordinance reads right now with the to-go orders, you can't consume that downtown, as we all know. On the city streets, within the park area, along the river, you can, provided it's not glass and it's beer and wine. So that is what I understand the request. I don't know if there's other clarification that Tasha or anyone else could make on that, or anything I missed.
Thank you, John.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you. To piggyback off of Councilmember Brock's comment on the curbside, I'd also like to ask that same question of number 1, modifying the on public property. I feel as though we just discussed that thoroughly while discussing number 4, in regards to closure of the street. I think we discussed at length that this would not include that people would not be able to drink outside of the designated parklets. So I feel as though number 1 has also been thoroughly discussed within the agreement to number 4. If there's an opinion on that from the staff.
Council member. Yeah, we've had some significant discussion on the alcohol portion of it. So, and I may look to Dan Flegel for direction on this one as well. We have the request before us specifically on alcohol service in the request to make a change. The council is not obligated to take up that action. If they wish to do something, they obviously would need to make a motion in support of it and take action. But if they choose not to through their discussion, there's not any further action they would need to take. Is that correct, Dan?
I think, and just to be clear, the takeout orders of food can be consumed anywhere on the public streets in any areas. We have added more tables and places for that to happen. It would be if the council wanted to do something that would allow a designated open bottle area where the alcohol, the off-sale alcohol coming with the takeout orders could be consumed.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you. Then to clarify, unless any of the other council members have any reason to not, I would like to recommend that we go ahead with number 6, our final topic here in regards to no vaping and no smoking. As again, as I indicated, I feel that number 1 and number 2 have been already answered in our previous conversations to close the street.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld, second by Councilmember Balsonic. Uh,
I don't know that there's a motion.
I don't really know
necessary
if
for
that's
that.
a,
okay, we'll
It's just a
move to-
recommendation for
yeah,
discussion, I think.
Just move to number 6 on
Yep.
the temporary no smoking signs. John, can you help with that a bit?
Can I save a second on that, Your Honor?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the signage for no smoking and no vaping in the area in which we are closing on Fridays through Sundays.
Okay, Councilmember Liefeld and a second by Councilmember Lund. How about discussion on this?
Just a staff
Yes.
clarification on the intent. I'm sorry, council member. So with this would be the installation of signage the way that I see it right now. So a clarification I'm seeking is this the ability to put signage up, or is this the responsibility of the city to put that signage up? And then and maybe a question for Dan Flegel on this one. Have the ability to do that. I mean, it might be a situation in which a private entity could put signage up there that would be cautionary to say, hey, no smoking, no vaping. But when we're looking at the legalities of potentially creating a no smoking, no vaping zone, that's a little more complex on there. So there's one thing that people could do in which they can put signage up, and I don't think people would have much issue with on that end of it. But I'm not sure if the intent is for us to get involved in it. If we get involved in putting the signage up, I'm not sure what sort of legal ramifications we may get into on that.
City Attorney Dan can.
Would agree with staff. We've talked about, we don't really have a problem if the individual licensees want to put up signs near their areas saying, please do not smoke, smoking prohibited even. I do have a real concern. To order no smoking, there has to be some teeth behind that. That would have to probably come in the form of an ordinance so that someone could be charged with a crime if they violate it, and also so the police department could enforce that. I also, I don't know for sure if a city can prohibit smoking in these broad areas. We certainly have experience with prohibiting in parks and other areas, but generally those are backed by studies that support the rationale behind the restriction. So we've got that public purpose behind it. I would, for simplicity, I would be in favor of a motion that would say city is not going to object to the individual owners placing signs in areas, and we're not going to take those signs down or anything. I think if there's an intent to try to have an enforceable no smoking area that can actually be enforced, then I think I would recommend it come back before the council when we could have some type of an ordinance put in place. I don't know that this meets the definition of an emergency ordinance either. I understand the intent, and I certainly don't have an objection to the concept. I think procedurally we have to look at this one a little differently, because if we can't enforce it, then they're just signs. And if we're okay with
Your
them
Honor.
signs, that's great. But if
Okay.
not,
Councilmember Lund.
thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I appreciate the explanation. That's my understanding, or the way I interpreted it was the ability to put the signs up and not be something that the city is going to be responsible for at this point in time. Here's how I see it. I see if individual businesses feel like that's the best practice for their business, then they can put those signs up. And if it becomes a significant problem, then we can address that later on. But let's see if they get what they want out of it just by being able to put the signs up. I don't even know if it's necessarily something we'd have to vote on technically, but maybe more of just a show of support for them to be able to do so. That's where my head is at. Obviously, I didn't make the original motion, so I'd have to look to Councilmember Liefeld for clarification. But that's what I was interpreting it as.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Mayor Fassbender?
Liefeld?
To clarify, yes, I would, my motion is to support the private installation of the non-smoking and vaping signs affixed to their area, indicating that we as a city will not be removing them or taking them down, that we do support them, their right or ability to hang those signs.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld. Is there a second?
There was already a second.
I had seconded it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Councilmember Lund. Discussion, any other discussion?
Your Honor, I
Do we
think,
even need,
go ahead, go ahead,
Councilmember Vaughn,
go ahead.
Councilmember Vaughn.
do we even need a motion then if there's no change to ordinance? All we're saying is we support them. I don't know.
We're just supporting him verbally. I don't know, I'd
Yeah.
look through Attorney Dan on that.
If it's necessary, I don't know if there's harm either to have the motion. I think it's discretionary. I agree. If there's no enforcement action, there's probably not a need.
Okay,
You do have a
I'll
Thank
motion.
remove my motion, Your Honor.
okay, thank you. So John, does that help? Are we
I think we've got direction. The
we
way
whittle
that,
down?
the way
Okay,
that I'm interpreting it, we've taken action on a number of items today. At this point, based upon the discussion that I have heard, I don't know if there's any other actions on the request that the DBA made to the city. So that's my interpretation of where we're at with the meeting. If others feel differently, we can have discussion or further motions that come up. Otherwise, I do have one other small action item too that I don't want to forget about as well.
Your Honor,
Counselor-
before John moves on, this is
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Councilmember Fulch.
In regards to the curbside to go, I agree that we're not going to take up the first item about the consumption. But what they're still looking to do is just for the city to help promote the areas that the city has set up to allow people to eat curbside to go, which is under, in the plaza, and then down by the river. And so I think that's my interpretation. What they're looking for is just that the city is also helping to spread the word that these areas are available for people to take their food curbside to go and sit down and eat. And it is allowable for people to actually go eat down by the river and also consume if they took a off sale beverage to go. And so I would, so if it helps, I think it would be nice if people use the plaza area, but if it helps just for clarity's sake, just to say that down by the river, there's picnic tables for curbside to go, I'm willing to do that. But I just don't think that we should lose sight of that without having a local paper. It's so hard to get the word out. And so if the city is helping to push that just through social media and such that those are areas that people can go, I think that's helpful.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch.
Mayor?
Yeah, I'm
Councilmember.
trying to, Councilmember Liefeld, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Completely agree that what we can do to push the idea out. And remember too, and I'm absolutely certain that these businesses are doing it, remind people of that. Call in their orders when they stop and pick up their orders, remind them. It's still amazed at the number of people who haven't gone down to the riverside and checked out that beautiful area. So this is a perfect time to, provided it's not raining, to remind people to, take your food, head down to the, down to the river. There's some beautiful spots. So agree that this is probably something that need a lot of conversation on, but we strongly support it.
And I do know with talking to Pat Regan that the public patio at the confluence will soon to be open. So there will be another nice area for viewing and eating. John
Mayor?
Hinsman, yes.
Mayor? This is Dan. Real quick, just point of clarification for everybody. Containers are not allowed in the city parks. So to go is great if it's a can or
Correct.
plastic, but not a glass bottle, please.
Yep, we'll try to emphasize that. Thank you. Hinsman, you had one other thing?
I did. I had a quick item here, which was the expansion of a liquor license for Applebee's so they could convert a portion of their parking lot into outdoor dining. This is similar to a request we had at the last council meeting.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve that, Your Honor.
Okay,
Second,
thank you, Joe. And second, it was that Councilmember Brox?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on that, council. Seeing none, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
He's gone, but he did chat that he was supported. Oh, I think it was a previous item, sorry.
Yes.
Sonic,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Member Liefeld,
Yes,
Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fit.
Oops.
Lost all.
It looks like there was on the voice vote there, with the 6 present, the 6 in favor of the motion, was that correct? Mayor, did you
Correct.
get that?
Yes,
Okay.
motion prevails.
That's all the items staff had for the special meeting this morning.
Okay,
Motion
great.
to adjourn, Your Honor?
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Discussion, seeing none, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Vaughn, oh, excuse me, Councilmember Fultz,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Everybody have a great day. Councilmember Brox, have a good vacation.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
vacation.